Nathan jolts awake, disoriented. A chilling realization hits him. He's been in a car accident. The wreckage of his vehicle lies crumpled on the roadside, yet he's miraculously unscathed. A startle echoes through the stillness as Daniel, the biker he'd collided with, approaches. To Nathan's astonishment, Daniel is also unharmed. Daniel inquires if Nathan remembers exiting the car, but Nathan's mind draws a blank. He attributes it to the shock and the jarring blow to his head. Yet there's no wound, no pain. Then, Daniel drops a bombshell. They're dead, their spirits lingering in this spectral realm. Daniel theorizes he preceded Nathan, having been there for several minutes. At first he was in denial, but the evidence is irrefutable. Nathan vehemently refuses to believe it. He rushes to his car, only to find the driver's side a mangled mess. His body lies within. The shock is overwhelming, sending Nathan into a tailspin of existential dread. He thinks of his friends, his children. Daniel mentions his own loss, his wife. He finds it odd that Nathan hasn't mentioned the child's mother. As Nathan's distress escalates, Daniel calmly states that this confirms the afterlife's existence. He feels a sense of peace, a notion that sends Nathan into further turmoil. Denying everything, he clings to the hope that this is all a horrific nightmare. Daniel, adamant and resolute, dragged the lifeless form from the car, forcing Nathan to confront the grim reality. Nathan, his discomfort palpable, averted his gaze, covering the body's face with a handkerchief. As if summoned by fate, a car materialized down the road, halting beside the corpse. Nathan's plea for help was muffled, a silent scream lost in the void. A crude, unceremonious kick confirmed the body's lifeless state. A shadowy figure, driven by greed, rifled through Nathan's pockets, absconding with his meager possessions before vanishing into the night. The stark realization that he was now a ghost settled upon Nathan, a chilling weight on his soul. He confessed his crime, the murder of his wife, but swore it was an act of mercy. Before he could elaborate, Daniel was enveloped by a haunting melody, a spectral symphony that seemed to emanate from a mysterious white door that materialized before them, accompanied by a sudden, ethereal snowfall. Daniel insisted the music originated from the door, but Nathan remained oblivious. As they prepared to step through, a second door, crimson and menacing, appeared behind them. Nathan heard a cacophony of screams, a chilling reminder of the horrors that awaited within. Daniel, however, was silent, unable to perceive the infernal sounds. They deduced that the white door was the gateway to heaven, while the red door led to the depths of hell, a punishment for Nathan's heinous act. Nathan, overcome with terror, pleaded for understanding, explaining his wife's suffering and his desperate attempt to alleviate her pain. Daniel, however, remained unmoved, determined to cross the white door. Nathan, in a desperate bid for survival, shoved Daniel aside and stepped through the portal, disappearing into the unknown. Daniel confessed his lapse of judgment, revealing he had been distracted by a young girl playing at the roadside. The men embraced, a bittersweet farewell. Daniel stepped through the white door, but to his astonishment, nothing happened. He tried again, to no avail, the ethereal music fading into silence. A voice echoed behind them, and the little girl Daniel had seen materialized, a chilling reminder of her untimely demise. She explained she had been struck by a cyclist, and Daniel, overcome with guilt, admitted his own reckless behavior, having driven under the influence. Nathan, his voice filled with accusation, revealed the truth. It wasn't an accident. Daniel's negligence had cost an innocent child her life. After a heated exchange, the men attempted to guide the girl towards the white door, but she, having been taught to distrust strangers, began to scream. Their efforts to calm her were futile, and Daniel, exhausted, resorted to force, lifting her and hurling her through the portal. The girl vanished, and with her, the white door disappeared. The men realized it was time for their own journey. Daniel hesitated, his fear palpable. Nathan, with a forceful kick, urged him forward, recounting the circumstances surrounding his wife's death. Daniel, steadfast in his innocence, refused to cross. A monstrous figure, its fiery breath carrying countless souls, materialized on the road. Terrorized, Nathan stepped through the red door. Nathan found himself in the infernal realm, a desolate landscape filled with thousands of unconscious souls. His gaze fell upon a young girl, and he knelt, overcome with shock. Grasping her hand, he delved into her memories. The girl's name was Jeanne, and her room was haunted by shadowy figures. Sleep was elusive, a constant battle against the discordant arguments of her parents. Her mother yearned to comfort her, but her father, consumed by fear, believed they needed protection. Desperate for solace, Jeanne sought refuge in her music box, its melodies a soothing balm. Gazing out the window, she blamed the eerie shadows on the towering tree outside. Venturing downstairs for a snack, she witnessed her parents' ongoing dispute. Taking matters into her own hands, she prepared a simple meal, spreading jam on bread slices with clumsy but joyful enthusiasm. Time passed, and Jeanne sought help from a therapist. Jeanne described how she had accidentally distressed a mother bird by offering crumbs to her young. The mother bird, alarmed for her offspring, had flown towards her. Jeanne, in a moment of impulsive action, had strangled the birds. She also admitted to a pattern of aggressive behavior towards her younger sister, whom she disliked intensely. She acknowledged her parents' fear of her, a fear rooted in past incidents of nocturnal violence. As a consequence, she was confined to her room each night. The therapist sought to address Jeanne's actions towards her sister, but Jeanne refused to engage in the conversation. The following morning, Jeanne awaited breakfast at the table, but her parents did not appear. Moments later, she emerged, a bowl of cereal in hand, her clothing stained with blood. Her parents lay lifeless on the floor. She verified their demise and then, in a gesture of finality, kissed her mother's cheek. She prepared more bread and jam and descended into the basement, a peculiar space resembling a cavernous chamber. There, she shared the food with her friend Tony, a humanoid creature with physical abnormalities. Jeanne suspected Tony of being responsible for her parents' deaths, but he denied any involvement. As Tony consumed the food, Jeanne announced that with her parents gone, he was free to ascend to the upper level and reside with her. Tony, now exploring the house, was captivated by the sensation of sunlight, a novel experience. Jeanne guided him to the bathroom and instructed him on the use of the bathtub while she adorned herself with her mother's cosmetics and jewelry. Tony was again struck by the sensation of clean water against his skin. After dressing in the father's clothes, Jeanne requested his assistance in moving something. Before doing so, Jeanne wished to create a final farewell. She imagined a theatrical performance with her parents as the audience. She narrated a tale of waking up to an empty breakfast table, picturing the audience laughing at her jokes. Then she used a chain to guide Tony to the stage, declaring him the culprit and sentencing him to a symbolic execution. Tony denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had no recollection of his existence prior to the cave. Jeanne convinced the imaginary crowd to vote for his execution, and Tony was forced to step onto a stool. Afterwards, Tony concealed the mother's body beneath the double bed while Jeanne gleefully jumped on it, envisioning a playful prank involving a knife. Tony then hid the father's body, and he realized his reflection was missing, confirming his role as Jeanne's darker side. She had, indeed, caused the tragic events of the previous night. As neither could cook, they settled for a simple meal of cereal and bread. A doorbell rang, and Jeanne answered to find the mailman. Needing an adult to sign the delivery, she called for Tony, but he was nowhere to be found. The mailman left a missed delivery notice. Jeanne frantically searched for Tony, finding him in her parents' room, where he was engaging in a disturbing activity. She shouted at him to stop as the door closed. Later, as her toys were consumed by fire, Jeanne checked on her younger sister, who was drawing a picture related to the tragic events. Jeanne announced that Tony was hungry and led her sister to the kitchen, where she accidentally caused an unfortunate incident. Jeanne then left the kitchen, singing merrily as shadows danced on the walls. In the afterlife, Nathan was repulsed by what he witnessed. He wandered away, encountering a teenage girl and her mother, Julia. In a memory, Julia was struggling to prepare tea while fighting back tears. Julia called for her daughter, but there was no response. Then she noticed a dark mark on the table. She tried to wipe it away, but it seemed to worsen. Still in disbelief, Julia went to the bathroom. The tub was filled with water, and something seemed amiss. As she pulled her daughter from the tub, Julia couldn't hold back her tears. She carried Khloe to the kitchen table, as if preparing for a breakfast together. A flashback to the previous morning revealed Khloe in the tub, looking troubled. Julia had urged her to hurry, reminding her of the importance of being on time. During breakfast, Khloe had listened to Julia's heated phone call while staring at a utensil. Memories of difficult experiences at school seemed to weigh heavily on her. A small cut on her finger had left a mark on the table. When it was time to leave, Khloe had tried to explain her feelings, expressing a desire to stay home. Julia, however, believed that Khloe needed more time to adjust to her new environment. Khloe had pleaded and cried, describing school as a challenging place. Julia, unfortunately, dismissed her daughter's concerns, believing her to be overly dramatic. In the present, Khloe's body slumped from the chair, and a cat seemed to be drawn to the wound. Julia startled the pet away and placed Khloe in a wheelchair while disregarding her ringing phone. She abruptly snapped and declared that they were embarking on a trip before rushing to her closet, where she gathered a few belongings while experiencing another breakdown. She then covered Khloe's body with a blanket and swore her love, acknowledging her absence in certain aspects of Khloe's life. Julia also announced that Khloe would no longer be required to attend school, and would instead be homeschooled. Upon opening the front door to depart, Julia was astonished to discover it obstructed by a brick wall. This incident evoked another distressing memory of Khloe attempting to conceal herself in a bathroom stall, while other girls taunted and harassed her. Their threats compelled Khloe to emerge, and they promptly cornered her, subjecting her to verbal abuse and forcing her to kneel. The girls compelled Khloe to perform a degrading act while one of them recorded the ordeal. Returning to the present, it became apparent that the brick wall symbolized Julia's neighbor, who had arrived for a visit and believed she had heard Julia scream. A panicked Julia hastily suggested a vacation to evade the conversation, but the neighbor noticed her unusual behavior and entered the house, only to be met with a horrifying sight: Khloe's lifeless body. Shortly after, Julia drove away with the body in the passenger seat. As she wept, she recounted the day Khloe was born, vowing to provide a better life. Julia pleaded for Khloe to respond, but eventually the harsh reality set in, forcing her to close Khloe's eyes. This distraction led to a car accident, where the vehicle collided with a tree. A flashback revealed Khloe's tragic demise in the bathtub and her mother's heartbreaking discovery. Julia awoke, bleeding and disoriented, as firefighters broke down the door to rescue her. She resisted their efforts, unwilling to leave her daughter behind. While some firefighters carried Julia away from the wreckage, others examined Khloe, only to find her lifeless body, initially assuming she had perished in the accident. Khloe was placed in a body bag, her mother's pleas and cries falling on deaf ears. In the infernal realm, Nathan covered the bodies of the deceased women and collapsed onto the ground, weary of witnessing such tragedies. At that moment, the devil appeared, proclaiming that he would lead Nathan to his just punishment. Once more, Nathan attempted to justify his actions, explaining his wife's affliction with multiple sclerosis. However, the devil dismissed his claims, asserting that his wife's mental state had rendered her incapable of making informed decisions regarding euthanasia, thereby negating any consent. The devil then guided Nathan to another region, explaining that the initial stage of eternal damnation involved semi-isolation, a process designed to erase the souls of their past lives, transforming them into pure spirits of agony and despair. Nathan passed through a new portal, entering a darkened chamber filled with other dormant bodies. The devil announced that the isolation would endure for 4,000 years, a mere fraction of the suffering to come. As Nathan succumbed to panic, the devil vanished, the entrance disappearing behind him. Suddenly, a shroud stirred, and a decaying soul named Billy emerged. Billy perceived Nathan as a new plaything, immediately attacking him with savage force, pummeling his head and tossing him about without mercy. Nathan was hurled to the ground, subjected to a brutal beating until he lay motionless. Billy let out a cry of frustration, realizing he had gone too far, destroying Nathan's soul and forcing his reincarnation. In the earthly realm, a mother welcomed a healthy newborn, while the devil informed Billy that by returning a damned soul, he had inadvertently created the Antichrist. The devil punished Billy by severing his head, then explained that his body would regenerate, and his new mission would be to retrieve Nathan's soul. Sometime later, Billy appeared in the infant's room. Remember to subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated with more content like this. Thank you for watching.